David Zuckerman, thank you for joining us. I'm your Lieutenant Governor and hosting a conversation around the Northeast Kingdom and the economy of the region and the potential future for growth in the economy in the region. And I welcome folks watching on Zoom and in particular also on Facebook, where we will be, after a few questions, be taking questions from those of you who are watching to be able to put to our panel of great knowledgeable folks from different aspects of living and working in the Northeast Kingdom. Obviously, it's an extremely special area. I always love to get up there, whether it's to the ski areas, the trails. I biked with some folks outside of Newport last year. There's a lot going on up there, and it's important, I think, for the rest of the state to know about it, but also to really think about the ways we can help it thrive economically in a strong way. We've got obviously a lot of hardworking folks up there, a number of really successful businesses, whether it's, I think it's now called Galvian, used to be Revision, Ethan Allen Furniture, Catamount Arts, Hill Farmstead, Jay Burke, Pete Screens, Jasper Hill, Kingdom Trails, Craftsbury Outdoor Center, NVU, and the hospital. If somebody's got a mic going, there we go. Thank you. There's a lot happening up there, and those are some of the bigger employers, but there's a lot of small employers, great farms all over the region, small craft producers, there's hospitality industry, there's a lot happening. And tonight's discussion is really going to be more about how government, businesses, educational systems, nonprofits, the community can help build on the assets you have, and where we can go. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to start by asking my guests just to give a quick 1-minute introduction and maybe share what you think the greatest asset of the region is. And I am going to call on folks so that we have an order to help with the visual of what's going on. And I was going to start with Senator Bobby Starr to just give a quick minute intro of who you are and what's the greatest asset in the region.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave, for having this. I'm Senator Bobby Starr, lived in the Northeast Kingdom most of my entire life, came back home from Connecticut. I was born there. My dad was down there during the war, so that tells a little bit about my age. And we've got the most beautiful landscape and I think in the state of Vermont, we've got great people, good, hardworking people. We got 2 great ski areas in the kingdom. We got 2 great trails, bike trails, and then we've got the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail that we're trying to get done, but there's a host of many things that make our area great and sustainable, and we just need a few things to make it work all better.
Well, you didn't leave too many great assets for the others to talk about, but I bet they'll come up with something. Emily, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name's Emily Mcclure. I am a nearly lifelong Kingdom girl. I grew up in Orleans and the Harrisburg area, and left for about 15 years and came back and bought a little store in Craftsbury, the Craftsbury General Store now, and I've had it for about 8 years. Myself and my partners are, there's the richness of the Kingdom is kind of, for me, it just feels like this ability that we're self-sustaining, that we really have everything from, this working landscape. We can feed ourselves, we can recreate, we can, enjoy all that we have here in a way that I feel like we're watching in urban areas right now really struggle. We can buy a quarter cow. We don't have to worry about the meat market out in Idaho or, wherever. So just feeling, I think self-sustaining is what feels like our greatest asset right now.
Great. Thank you, Emily. And I think we did get former representative and farmer and Agway owner, Dick Lawrence, was able to get in, I think only by phone. But Dick, I'd love you to just introduce yourself briefly and say a great asset of your region there.
Thank you, David. I am sorry. It tells me my browser is not supported, so we've been working on it, and unfortunately, I guess maybe I needed a haircut. That's why you didn't want to get my picture. But thank you for having us. I think a lot of the things that are an asset for our area is connected to the type of things that I have done. We have a great local communities that support the individuals in it. I was very active in town politics for several years. I bought an Agway store and was owner of that for 19 years. Agriculture used to be a larger business than it is now. Well, you all know how that has dwindled. But we still have a lot of smaller farms, and I think that is one of our real pluses. Farmers markets are really thriving throughout the state, and they also are in the Northeast Kingdom. Winter sports was mentioned. That includes not cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, snowmobiles, and of course the biking atmosphere. But one of the things that's made the Caledonia County maybe a more focal point are the arts. The arts, we have a lot of interest in that, and Catamount Arts, which most of us have heard about, are one of the focus points where it all basically starts. But there's an awful lot of art displays, artists that do different things, and I think we are really known for our artists and our artwork and our covered bridges. So those are a lot of the things that I see as an asset. And of course, the tourist industry is very important to us. So those are things that I would add or support what other people have said as our assets of our area.
Great, thank you. And maybe we'll talk about broadband and browsers and things later. Who knows? But Abby Long, could you introduce yourself and give us a great aspect of what you see up in the Northeast Kingdom?
Yes, thank you, David, and to your team for welcoming me. I always jump at the chance to share our story. My name is Abby Long. I'm the executive director for the Kingdom Trail Association. Kingdom Trails is a nonprofit trail network. Many folks have already touched upon it, which I'm thrilled. And our mission is to provide recreation and education opportunities by managing, maintaining, and building trails to foster the health of our community, surrounding environment, and regional economy. And I do have to admit, my husband and I are newer folks to the Kingdom. We moved 2 years ago from Colorado. And we did so as the area has everything we could ever want in a community. Right in our own backyard, we have 100+ miles of world-renowned trails where we can recreate to our heart's content. We're surrounded by the most stunning, natural, peaceful, pastoral landscape. And that's what I truly see as the region's greatest asset, and why we've chosen to be here and grow our family as we're expecting our first baby in July.
Woo! All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun news. And it's, I think Vermont obviously is looking to attract folks. So it's nice to know that something about Vermont's attracting folks. We're glad to have you. We maybe can talk on that some more in a little bit. And Tim Egan, we've got you on the line as well to give a brief introduction, please.
Well, thank you, David, for having me. I'm a part-time faculty member at Northern Vermont University, Lyndon, and I run their Incubator Without Walls, where we put students involved in small businesses and helping small businesses grow and students getting experience. I've been in the media business for about 35 years. But interestingly, I'm also the state rep for Grafton District 2, which borders Vermont. That's Sugar Hill, Franconia, Lisbon, Lyman, and Monroe. And in a nod to Senator Lawrence, I'm actually the treasurer on the board at Catamount Arts. And I think that is part of some of the great assets. I'm a relatively new person to the region, about 15 years living in northern Grafton County, but spending a lot of time in the Northeast Kingdom. And I see that really it's the people that are passionate about where they live and how they live. And I see a lot of that in ecotourism and the creative economy. And I think that's an important part to promote, because it gets people to come to the region. And when they get there, they find people that run small shops and restaurants and inns and arts programs. And I think that's what makes the area special. And I think that's a value that we should talk about today and talk about every day, about the Northeast Kingdom and Northern Vermont. So thanks for having me.
Sure. It's just amazing already to hear the range of different ideas and topics and strengths that you've all brought into this conversation, which makes me excited for the actual questions and see where we go. But I'd love to hear you sort of open up with the other side of it. What are 2 or 3 economic challenges that are facing the region? And maybe just stick with 2, because with 5 of you, we'll probably get most of them covered. And I'm just wondering, maybe Abby, if you could start, like, coming from somewhere else and just plunking in all of a sudden, like, great things and, ooh, what's not working? What's a challenge up there?
Well, I'm always the ever optimistic. So instead of right off the bat naming economic challenges, since I represent the outdoor recreation perspective, I wish to highlight that recreation is a really powerful economic driver in the region. Kingdom Trails alone has an annual impact of over $10 million. That absolutely will be affected due to the COVID-19 crisis this year. We will be seeing drastically lower trail user numbers as the Canadian border remains closed. Overnight lodging is not available at this time. Out-of-staters are being asked not to come to Vermont to recreate, and if they do, they must self-quarantine for 14 days after arriving. But we are still cautiously opening, thanks to the governor's Play Smart, Play Safe addendum just last week when he announced that. And we are, because we know we play a crucial role in people's physical and mental health and the economy. And like many of the folks during the introduction named, there are so many recreation opportunities in the NEK. Island Ponds Snow Blaster chapter, vast. Green Mountain Club's Heritage Trail, the Newport Bike Path that brings you to Canada, and Craftsbury Outdoor Center where Olympians train. And all of these recreation opportunities hold close that similar mission that I expressed was Kingdom Trails, balancing stewardship with our community's economic interests. But one of the most common ground that they all have is they exist due to the generosity of private landowners. And there are challenges facing trails and outdoor recreation in the kingdom. Therefore, these are challenges to the economy. And that is Act 250. I truly believe there's a more encouraging way to address how Act 250 is applied to trails. And I hope folks and legislators, now that they're getting back into the groove of the session, consider the stakeholders and the consequences. I believe there's an alternative oversight process that's more appropriate for recreational trails to further continue Kingdom Trails and the whole kingdom and the entire state of Vermont, for that matter, as a leader in outdoor recreation, supporting our rural economies.
Thank you. Dick, I don't know whether to call you Dick or representative or farmer, but if you want to chime in on some of the challenges you see facing the region, they may be state policy, they may also be, geographic based or otherwise, but a couple challenges that maybe we try to be focused on remedying. Do we still have Dick Lawrence? We may have some.
Dick is muted.
Okay.
Yep, maybe Dan can unmute him.
Okay.
There you go.
Now?
We got you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry for the delay, but I
That's
would
all right.
agree with what was previously said. Act 250 is by sure one of our biggest problems that we have. The second one is our sales tax with neighboring New Hampshire. That is a bigger individual challenge to us than Act 250, although 250 is more of a state problem. We are located, most of the Northeast Kingdom is located within 30 miles of New Hampshire. And with a no sales tax in New Hampshire, and as a former merchant, you were always combating the person that came in and said, look, I will buy from you if you will forgive the sales tax. Well, as a small business owner, which Agway was, I wasn't able to do that. But so I would try to do it with earn their customer by having let's say more knowledge of the product that we were trying to sell. And obviously, I think our family had a good reputation in the area and that helped, but it still was something that always was a concern to me. And what I see for the people that are listening in that are not living close to New Hampshire, if you go over to New Hampshire, you will see in the largest box stores, close to 50% of the cars there are Vermonters. And that is on any average day. Frequently, we see more. So not only did I have to compete with New Hampshire for the 6% sales tax that I had to pay, that they could buy this same product in New Hampshire without paying that, but look at the revenue that the state lost by having that person go over there. They went over, they bought the product that they might be looking for. They continued to shop. They bought more products. Unfortunately, there's a lot less tax on liquor in New Hampshire, and it just goes on and on. So to me, probably the biggest disadvantage is our location being so close to Littleton and really not being able to compete continually with that sales tax that they do not have. But other things, certainly Act 250 is a huge problem. I have more comments on that later. But I would say another concern that we have that affects the entire state, but affects us because of the type of industry we do well in the Northeast Kingdom. We have a lot of wood processing, loggers, and many people make their living working, trucking, working in the woods, merchandising their product. We have load limits that are limited to in Vermont, that are not limited in Massachusetts. And when you start trucking, whether it's milk or logs or freight, and you can carry 80,000 pounds on Vermont roads, but 100,000 pounds in Massachusetts, as an example, your weight limits are much less in Massachusetts, because they can carry 100,000, where in Vermont you can, in many cases, only carry 80. That puts all these people at an economic disadvantage. So that is something that I don't want to get into politics, but that is something that we need to try to address. And we've tried to address it with our senators in Washington. And I know they're probably trying, but it's something that for us to be, we have to be on the same playing field. The Northeast Kingdom is not that way.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's good to hear all the different perspectives. So thank you. Tim, if you could give us just a couple minutes of your thoughts on some of the economic challenges.
Well, I think a lot of the economic challenges, David, sort of roll in together. You know, the biggest issue that I see in being in the legislature for a little bit and being in the business for a long time is business growth in Vermont. You know, there's no inward migration, there's more deaths than births. So there's no population growth in the state. And what happens usually is businesses move into the state and they add to the population growth. They create opportunities for people to work. They create opportunities for, you know, college students to get internships and potentially have career tracks. So maybe the effort is really short on where economic development and the Agency for Community Development is, in Commerce and Community, excuse me, the Agency for Commerce and Community Development and their efforts of looking at how do you draw more businesses into the state that can have an impact and grow the state. You know, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, 3 of the 4 oldest population states in the country besides Florida. So we're seeing that happen in the Northeast of New England, and it's a reoccurring problem. And that creates a lot of other problems. It's sort of like a long tail of problems, because then you have, you know, nobody moving and buying houses, nobody using their disposable income, you know, nobody driving up revenue through any of the taxes. I have to agree, as a New Hampshire resident, I too go and I see in the box stores all the Vermont plates, and I say, you know, if there's a lower tax rate in Vermont, maybe that helps keep some of the consumers, or is there another way to engage the Canadian consumers who have a higher tax rate? And also in respect to Representative Lawrence, you know, the same way that you'll lose business, some business to New Hampshire, where New Hampshire loses folks leaving New Hampshire to go work in Massachusetts. So they take their disposable income there. So it's sort of this perfect storm of problems that travel around, but I think it's based on how do we look at economic development and how can we do smart economic development, not just plowing under woods and building office complexes, because I think based on the COVID issue, we've seen that office complexes aren't really going to be the way of the future. People are going to be spending more time working from home. It's how do we create an economic situation and get people to understand that there's a community where you can go live and enjoy and potentially work. And maybe that, as you asked, maybe that circles back to your rural Wi-Fi question. If we can improve rural Wi-Fi, can people work out of their house, have home-based businesses? And now we see businesses growing in the state and people creating families in the state. And that's really a little bit of what I think Vermont is challenged with is the growth of its population based on the growth of its businesses.
Thank you. And Senator Starr, you want to bring up some thoughts you've been trying to work on or that you think are some challenges?
Well, I think one of our immediate biggest challenges to attract young entrepreneurs and young families to come here is remote working and the lack of broadband, which is a serious issue up here in the Northeast Kingdom. And with this COVID money, maybe we'll have the opportunity to get that moving forward and helping out. But it's very hard to attract young families that work from home without that. Another issue is, Abby talked about the Act 250 deal on the bike trails, and we were coming along pretty good with that until culvert hit us and we had to leave the building. And it's hard to work on an issue like that, being separated and away from your peers in Montpelier. But, that's a kind of a nonsense issue that they have faced at Kingdom Trails. And it really messes up private landowners because they're refusing to, open their land up if they have to go through Act 250, because Act 250, once you have an Act 250 issue on your land, it encompasses, all your land. But the other issue is we still have quite a few dairy farmers up here, and with the very low milk prices, it's really hurting our rural economy. And it isn't just in Troy or Derby or Lyndonville, it's really the entire economy of the area. And so those are two major issues. The other issue, and you can't really do anything about it, is that if we manufacture product here, a lot of times the raw product has to be brought here, and then you run up against the weight limitations that Dick was talking about. And then everything that you make has to be exported out of here. And of course, we're, a couple 150 miles to Boston, Hartford, New York. We're at a little bit of a disadvantage because of our location. I think we need to work better and more with our Quebec friends, and because we're only 90 miles from Montreal, where there's millions of people, and Sherbrooke, where there's hundreds of thousands. And so we need to develop our cross-border businesses and promote those.
All right. And Emily, if you want to throw in a few thoughts on some of the challenges you see, and then we're going to get on to the next question. Emily.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really going to jump on board with a lot of what folks are talking about. I think broadband is a massive issue, obviously brought to light now in the times of COVID, when kids can't get online with their teachers, when folks can't work from home. And truly, I think it's a huge impact on our economics. I mean, the amount of folks that would live up here, still keep their city job. It has a huge impact on our region for sure. I own an Airbnb, and the amount of people who are like, "How fast is your internet?" is a probably number one question. I also am a huge fan of our good friend Paul Brune, and really believe in the main streets of our state, and especially of our small region up here. These little towns are 1,000 people. But having the little general stores, having the bookstores, having the coffee shops, that is what brings people here when they're not biking, when they're not out watching Bread and Puppet, when they're not doing the things, the other things that people recreate doing in our area. So I just think that the more we can do to support our main streets, and I think we are about to see probably some pretty severe devastation in this area when it comes to our main streets. So just thinking of how we really can support our small businesses, whether it's, innovative programming, NCIC always has been great with technical grants and stuff like that. But I think we're really gonna have to be thinking outside of the box as to how to help people come out of this. Because even if we're not talking directly about COVID right now, it is here, and it is affecting, so many folks around here.
Yeah, it certainly is. And even in the midst of all of COVID, we also got news of the state colleges plan potentially to shutter 3 of the 4 campuses, residential campuses, of which obviously NVU Lyndon is right up there in your arena. Johnson's not very far away. The technical college in Randolph, obviously related to a lot of dairy programs. Senator Starr and I have worked, and actually Dick Lawrence as well, on ag committees on the 2+2 program. So I'm going to talk about NVU a little bit. And, what are the ways that keeping NVU and maybe even building on NVU could help address some of the challenges? I heard about drawing people to the region. I heard about potential need for a workforce. And, Tim, you teach there. You've got some business experience. I'm going to start with you, Tim, on the NVU question. How can it help us with some of these demographic and other challenges?
Well, I think a variety of ways that university can help. I think, obviously universities are always an economic center. There's a lot of transactions that happen in and around the state, the region of a university. The small businesses that the students use, that the professors and faculty will use, they use them as vendors. So just the openness of the university and keeping it vibrant is an important part of it. But then how it helps, I think, is beginning to look at what is unique about the region and what is unique about the school, and try and tie those together for curriculum that can tie into gaining businesses and giving businesses an opportunity, whether they're local-based businesses or businesses that want to come in. I'll reference something that Senator Starr said. I serve on the board of the New England Canada Business Council. So we represent the 6 New England states and in its work with the 6 Eastern Canadian provinces. And as part of that, on behalf of the university, we've been reaching out to the University of Sherbrooke, to Bishops, to other universities to try and create more relationships that occur between the Quebec region and the university, so that we can potentially either find more students or find more opportunities for NVU students in Canadian businesses. And therefore, students will want to come to NVU because that opportunity is there to go work in electronic vehicle technology in conjunction with the University of Sherbrooke, or biopharma with Bishops. So I think that's one of the opportunities. Another one is the creative economy is a huge aspect that is going on that can affect the state. Vermont is one of the few states in the country that doesn't have a film office, and it doesn't have a creative economy office. But when you look at rural states like New Mexico or Georgia, they make millions in film business. So I'm not talking about, the New Yorks and the Illinois and the Californias, but states that can utilize their topography and their small towns and their main streets. Western Massachusetts has done a great job of doing that to cater to the film industry. That can tie into a really strong music business industry, visual arts program, electronic journalism arts program that exists at NVU. There's sort of tools there that just need to be used in a better way. And I think that's an opportunity. And then the last one that I think is really what could be utilized from the school is sort of the whether it's the solar industry, the cannabis industry, those are businesses that are growing. And if manufacturers of those or people within that industry can utilize the region for that, then you can create curriculum programs that students will be unique and say students will see as unique programs and say, I want to come to that school. So those are where maybe the school can be positioned to help the region and utilize the values that the region already has without trying to create anything new.
Thank you. I'm going to trying to keep folks a little bit constrained because to get to the third question, we're going to need to keep it a little shorter if we can. But Emily, what are your thoughts of what NVU could mean in your region?
Well, I'm the daughter of a Johnson graduate and a employer of a soon-to-be Johnson graduate, and just feel really strongly about having these universities or these schools close by. They keep folks in Vermont. When I speak of, I can think of 7 or 8 people offhand that attended these universities and are still living here and are contributing to our local economy. And I think that's a huge, huge thing. Right now, I have an employee, Matt, that is graduating from Johnson, and he is helping us build our web store, and he's brilliant. And he could, without that being there, I don't know where he would be. Would he be? I don't think he'd be at CCV, but it's a possibility. But we need these tools here to have the opportunity for folks. Whether it be financial implications of transportation issues, whatever it is, but they provide such a huge resource beyond the economic piece, which is clearly huge when we're talking about how this would affect Lyndonville and Johnson. So I just, whether it's working more with like internships, I think there's amazing employers in this region, and tying all like the food industry, the recreation industry into the schools, I think is a great selling point right now. Yeah,
thank you. Senator Starr, curious about your thoughts.
Thanks, Dave. Getting back to NVU, I was so proud of the people, of the Northeast Kingdom for coming out so strong and in force against the chancellor's decision to offer to close these schools. NVU and Lyndon and Johnson, they've provided excellent education for our young people that maybe don't have enough money to stay at school and pay room and board. They can commute to school. And I think, it would be a travesty to the state as well as the Northeast Kingdom if we lost these 2 schools. And, I thought a lot about this, and we've got 2 wonderful ski areas in our area. And, maybe, and I've worked with the Ski Areas Association and people up here at Jay. And maybe, we could develop a 4-year bachelor's degree in total ski management or mountain management education. The days have gone by. You need an environmentalist basically to run the show, to know about water quality and herbicides and pesticides and all those things. And the ski lifts, if they break, you have to get somebody from Germany or Switzerland over here to repair them. We could be training our own people to do these very jobs. And I think, we could maybe change the courses to some degree to fit the needs of not only our people, but people as their needs have changed to stay modern. And, the economy of the Northeast Kingdom especially down in Caledonia County, is driven by Lyndon, and down in Lamoille County, with Johnson, it would devastate the two local communities, but that would get spread out much broader.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think, we've got some work to do to get them back on track, but the legislature seems to be very supportive, and I know the Senate is, and I believe the House is as well. So,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Bobby. Dick, you're last up on the NVU question of, how can it help address some of the demographic and other challenges we've just heard about? I think we'll be fixing your mic here shortly. Can you, there you go.
Okay. Okay. What? Lyndon is so important to our town, our county. It offers approximately 400 local day students. Those students would not have an education if it wasn't for Lyndon. They aren't in a position financially to go to other places in many, many cases. We have a great meteorology department at Lyndon. I think every time you listen to anybody on TV, they're most frequently a Lyndon graduate. I think that's wonderful. We need to continue to, as Bobby says, to try to do something for outdoor recreation. I think we do have a major there, but I think we have to understand that maybe it needs to be broadened. I think that's where we can excel. And I think one thing that I find is where we should be developing is workforce training with some of our employees. We had a local employee that employed 400 people, wanted to expand. They couldn't get the workforce interest. And so they went to New Hampshire to develop another plant employing some 200 people. Those people could just as well have been in Vermont if we had been able to supply the workforce. And that would be a workforce of additional 200 people in the Northeast Kingdom would be major. NVU should be in a position to offer something along that line, working with local industries and businesses to develop what really is needed. And I know at one time they had a plan to do that. I think it got lost in some of the transactions as people changed positions. And I think that is where we could really show growth and maybe do some training so the students would be prepared to work and stay in the Northeast.
Well, thank you. And Dick, keep your mic on because you're going to be the first one on this next question as well, which we're going to do one more question that was planned, but also if folks have questions, if you're watching on Facebook, feel free to pop them up in the comment section and we'll try to bring them into this conversation. And right now, I'm curious about creative ideas. What are some ideas around stimulating the Northeast Kingdom economy that might address some of those economic challenges? So we talked about NVU as a possibility if we were to invest in NVU, and that could also shift some of their programs or be creative with their programs. What are some of the other things? Abby's involved with Kingdom Trails. What are, what are those opportunities that, due to our proximity to Boston, New York, Connecticut, Montreal, Sherbrooke, maybe it's the landscape, maybe it's the craftspersonship. What do you think, Dick? What are some ideas of the next 20 years and how do we start to build on those? Did we lose? There he is. Whoops. Your microphone's off again. There we go. Now you're good, Dick. You're good. Go ahead and talk.
Okay.
There we are.
So we'll repeat it the third time. Act 250 has got to be revised in some way so that we don't let everybody that has an interest in anything, even if they aren't located in an area, to come in and make it more difficult for that developer to develop a plan that's acceptable to the area. And I'm not one that wants to shortchange the process of doing what's best for the area. But somebody from completely that has no interest, that doesn't live in the area should not be a party to the 250 hearings. I think that would make life easier for those people that wanted to develop, and let the local people who are going to be directly affected by whatever development is being proposed to come up with the criteria that applicant should meet. Time and time again, I hear when I was in legislature of the problems of going through Act 250. And if I was going to, if I was going to say the one problem that we must address to improve the Northeast Kingdom economy is the regulation process, and it would stem from the studying, in which it has a process is going on now to help to look at making it more accessible for those people that want to do planning to be able to afford to do it, and then come up with a product that fits into the community. I'm going to just leave it with that one thing, David, because I think if we could do that, you would find that the kingdom would be able to develop and do things that would other people would be interested, developers would be more interested. They would realize that they don't have to spend a fortune to get something developed that is good for the promotion of the Northeast Kingdom.
Well, thank you. And maybe as other folks go, certainly we can talk about regulatory hurdles. I'm also curious on whether the hurdles are there or we remove them. What are those visionary directions you want to go? And Emily, I was going to turn to you. You know, you hear new people coming through the region in your area with your store. You hear from folks who've been there a long time with your store. I heard you speak at the Northeast Kingdom event back up at Burke a little bit ago, and the enthusiasm you had with respect to, you know, the possibility of these stores in the village centers if we can revitalize some of the economy. What are some of those directions you think are real opportunities for the Northeast Kingdom?
Yeah, I mean, I think we, the good news is I think we have a lot of things, a lot of the pieces in place. You know, we have Kingdom Trails, we have Jasper Hill, we have the Craftsbury Outdoor Center, we have the ski centers, we have great food around us. So I think when I think of ecotourism, for sure, I mean, like the rec world is where we're going. This is what this region, that's our richness, that's our landscape. I would love to see expanded trail systems throughout the Northeast Kingdom. I would love to see, more effort put into helping to fund these main streets. I think we're, I grew up going to the Newport area, and that's a sad place for me to visit right now, seeing a big hole in the middle of Main Street, and knowing that on the opposite side of that lake is a booming economy in Canada. So trying to figure out, how we can lift our region is always an endless battle, I guess, but one that we will keep fighting. And I feel really excited about the recreation aspect of our region, and that I'm not stuck to biking. I think, we have this is a great place to hunt. This is a great place to ski. And I think maybe the more regional mapping and the more, I'd love to see, apps where people could say like, oh, I'm here, I can go see this local farm's apple orchard and this local farm's here. And maybe I can do it on, gravel road maps. And so that's where I see the richness in our kingdom. But I also see the need for expanded social programming. Right now, obviously the drug epidemic is still massive here and probably about to get even worse in the times that we're in right now. So I think we have to think about our kids and more of that like lifelong learning, and NVU offers that. Having expanded childcare is also huge here. So when I have lots of wishes, but that's where I'll leave it.
Oh, that's great. And I'm going to zoom on over, as it were, to Tim for his thoughts on those opportunities that you partly mentioned when talking about NVU, but what opportunities and directions you think we could go, Tim?
Well, David, I think there's a couple opportunities. With the aging population that I mentioned, I think nursing is a huge possibility of creating opportunities. I think you tie in organic farming and a look at nutrition and My family talks a lot about the aging population and the way that we're not taking care of ourselves. And if we're looking at our nutrition and organic farming and using that as a tie-in to senior care, could that be an opportunity to create, I'll say not an industry, but opportunities in, senior centers or senior communities, because people will want to live here for the environment. And if you can then treat them in a healthy way, and we have great programs at VTC and at Johnson and other schools tied to nursing. So that could be one economic development opportunity that ties in, growing our schools. I think another one is back to this rural Wi-Fi question, telehealth. People can't travel so far or can't travel easily in the winter up here in the Northeast Kingdom. So if you can create an infrastructure of telehealth, building out infrastructure, having medical technicians that can be on call, that can actually take care of you from their home to your home. And one of the things that we can potentially take advantage of, the Rural Digital Opportunities Fund, which was passed when the FCC sold their broadcast spectrums, created a $20 billion fund that can be tapped into by states, but can also be matched by towns trying to do local bonding to create rural Wi-Fi when major companies like Spectrum or Comcast don't serve the area. So focusing on telehealth and medicine and nursing, while they're personal, compassionate, relatable businesses that I think, as I mentioned when we started this, I talked about that there's the people that I see in the Northeast Kingdom are passionate about, how they live and where they live. And if those are two economic development opportunities that can utilize the schools that we have that we're worried about saving, maybe that's a way to try and sew something together that's a benefit for all of us. We keep people happy and healthy and educated.
Right. Yeah, Abby, what could we do to, stimulate the economy and move towards that future? And you've got a perspective coming from Colorado, where Colorado draws people recreationally from all over the country. They've got to fly there. Do we have an advantage being just a few hours from Boston, New York, Connecticut? What can we do to stimulate the economy to grab some of that?
Well, I believe we should be investing in our infrastructure up here in the kingdom. I truly believe, especially as the COVID-19 crisis has brought to light so many inefficiencies, that the kingdom and the state needs to reinvest in our communities. I think back to my glory days in high school when we were all forced to study the New Deal after the Great Depression, and just down the road from my house is the CCC road and the campgrounds that were built on Burke Mountain back in the 30s that to this day attract recreation enthusiasts. And those infrastructure projects put people back to work while simultaneously investing and adding value into our region. And this is investment in infrastructure, I think, can happen on so many different levels, not just the concrete projects like our roads, even though we do need to fix all the frost heaves, but we also need to strengthen our social infrastructure. There are organizations such as the NEK Collaborative up here that are aiming to invest in civic and cultural organizations that will work to foster the community and understanding across political, social, and even racial lines. And I really think we need to, you mentioned I came from Colorado, and I think we need to welcome new residents who will become Vermonters by choice. No more using the name Flatlander. An inclusive Northeast Kingdom will serve as like a magnet for new energy and opportunity for those seeking to relocate to the rural region. And again, those new people will invest in the region.
Thank you. And Senator Starr, what do you think some of the sort of economic development opportunities are that might and ways to help stimulate the economy and ideas for the future?
Well, there's plenty of ways we can do that. To start with, I think we need to build out our broadband to help people be able to stay here. It's a wonderful place to live, but if you can't communicate, it's not too good. We ought to be putting more money into travel and tourism. And we certainly have got to help people get through this COVID 19 fiasco that we're all facing. In dairy, I think, we ought to work on having our own state milk order like Maine does, and we can set our own price for milk and forget the dilapidated federal milk order that was put together in 37. That's 1937. Maybe set up a dental hygienist program at NVU to attract more students to help keep that going along with the nursing. The READY program, that we do have that in place, but that's at Gus's shop and what that does is it provides a grant writer for small communities. And I put that in place for 3 years ago. So it's run 3 years, and that one grant writer has generated $4 million in grants that are to the small towns. And it's only good for towns up to 5,000 people. So, it's ideal for the Northeast Kingdom or most any place in Vermont. So we've got a lot of things that we should be doing and could be doing, and to help generate small businesses. I think we're better off with 10 3 or 4 employee businesses than we are one with 50 or 60. It's a great place to live, and when people once get here, they hate to leave. If they could only earn a living, and because we got good educational systems, North Country and Lyndon and St. J Academy and Lake Region, and then we've got NVU that people can commute to. So, it's a great place. We just need a few more jobs and a few more people.
Well, we are nearing, even just with those 3 questions, almost sort of the wrap up closing statements. I want to throw out there quick couple comments that came in on Facebook with questions. One was, would you try to improve the internet and other forms of the state's infrastructure? And I think we've heard some folks comment to that. And maybe, Bobby, you can give a 30-second update on what's possible with this CARES Act money, with education needs needing to be met with maybe the investment of internet. So maybe you can give us a quick update on that. And the other thing with infrastructure, I know Representative Lawrence talked about the roads, and someone else talked about the frost heaves. So bigger, heavier trucks, road impacts, those are challenges against each other a little bit. But maybe, Bobby, you can just talk briefly about infrastructure. I'll throw out the other thought that's on there, but then we'll have to probably get to closing comments. But Bobby, what's going on with internet? What's possible?
Well, of course, some schools have taken buses that's been rigged up, so they'll go park them in a public place. But I think if we had towers set up that in geographic areas that you could bounce off from neighboring, many houses could bounce off the same tower. That wouldn't be too bad a way to go. Everybody wants hard wire because it's better, but I think there are other ways to do this that would be quicker and cheaper. We screwed up years ago when we were doing internet. We should have required these big guys that came along and was putting it in where there's a house every 200 feet, that to get that contract, they should have had to have agreed to do our rural communities as well. It's a little bit like when years ago when if you lived out in the country, you didn't even have electric lights, but yet every town had lights. And And finally, Senator George Aiken got a bill passed, rural electrification, that brought electricity to our rural communities. So there's
Yeah.
certainly a lot of work there to do, Dave.
Yeah, and I hear maybe the CARES Act money, but we'd have to spend it by the end of the year. But maybe might be able to help with running either some of that line or building some of those towers, because there's an expense created by having to be educating people over the internet. So that's a new expense that may fit within the rubric of that $1 billion of money. The other comment that came in, I unfortunately won't be able to address it, but someone said perhaps we could have small clusters of senior housing on some of our diversified organic farms. And the context of that was that because many seniors, even those with considerable incomes, are not benefiting from very nutritious foods. So it's an interesting topic to go into, maybe for another day or all over the state, in terms of how do we have healthy housing for seniors and healthy food, and draw that connection closer together. So that'll be a thought for another day, unless anybody wants to throw something in a quick closing comment as we get towards wrapping up. This has been fascinating conversation for me, hearing from each of you of like the connections between the different issues you're talking about, but also the incredible spirit and energy for the potential of the future of the Northeast Kingdom. It's really vibrant and exciting to see, and especially with some future in there with Abby and expecting little one coming in another couple of months. That's really exciting. And so I'm going to ask just briefly for each of you to give maybe a 1-minute closing thought. Emily, I was going to go with you first and throw it out there.
Well, first, I really want to thank you and the governor and all the folks around the state that are working so hard through this COVID. I think we're really, it feels like our state is ahead of the curve, and or flattening the curve, I should say, but also that we've really been working through this together, and that's been really wonderful. And, you know, I think the Northeast Kingdom, you know, it was named the Northeast Kingdom for a reason. It really has this richness that, you know, that we all feel really strongly about. And, you know, I'm just turned 40, and I have a bunch of friends that are around my same age that have been back here now for 8 or 10 years. And we're here and we're working hard, and we believe in this region. And, you know, there's a lot of businesses, you know, being built, and we need the state to believe in our region as much as we do.
Great. Thanks,
Thank you.
Emily. Tim, real quick, what do you got?
Well, I think having these kind of discussions are really important. That, you know, continuing to have these kind of discussions and mixing, you know, business and education and government together to share ideas. You know, the minute we start closing our ideas, and or the phrase I love is, the minute you think you know everything, you haven't learned anything. So that's my sort of my closing statement, is that we should be doing more of this. We should have legislators and leaders like you getting folks together to have these kind of discussions, because good ideas come out, connections come out. I'm fascinated to follow up with Representative Lawrence, Senator Starr, to talk about, you know, things that our states might be able to do together. And I was glad when you put this panel together that I knew or had dealt with 2 of the business owners on the panel. So these are the kind of things that I think Vermont and, you know, states in New England need to do to grow their economy and make their people better, is share bright ideas and have open discussions about how we solve our problems, not just be naysayers and say, oh, we have a problem and I don't want to ignore it, or I don't want to deal with it. We have to deal with them because this is all we have to deal with.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim, and I appreciate that. As I introduce former Representative Dick Lawrence for his final thought, he is still well connected to folks who are in the legislature, so keep talking to him, but he has stopped being a legislator. But former Rep Dick Lawrence, store owner, what's your quick closing thought on this conversation?
I think it's what we as a community can do. And I think when we as a community act together, and I say a community, meaning the Northeast Kingdom in this particular case, it's amazing what we can do. Sometimes it takes the threat of a closing of like NVU, Lyndon, or Johnson, to make us all get united. But that in itself, that experience someone else has mentioned, it really is something that we need to work together on. And once we start working together, we have the ingenuity in the Northeast Kingdom to make a lot of things work. Sometimes it's just getting that little desire to get that group together and get it started. I'm just amazed what we can do as a community when we try. Sometimes we sit back and be critical, but when we work together, we can move mountains. I think we're known for that. And I'd like to think that this program has helped us stimulate those thoughts and maybe get us going in a positive direction.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Senator Starr, closing minutes?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the other panelists and say that, I'm really so proud to represent such a great bunch of people as we have up here in the Northeast Kingdom. I've done it for quite a while, but they'll call me and we chit chat about the issues and then the challenge. I really enjoyed the challenge of actually getting something done in Montpelier to actually help them. So, it's been great, and I've enjoyed it, and every year is exciting and different. And, I just hope people, hang in there, keep plugging away, working together. This is a great forum, Dave, and thanks a lot for hosting it and getting it together.
Well, you bet. And Abigail, you get the last comment from our panelists before I wrap things up briefly. So hit us a home run on the closing thought. How's that for pressure?
I'll make it a good one. I just wish to express how inspired by the resolve, the compassion, the resourcefulness that's demonstrated locally in the kingdom, across our state, and especially the fast-paced, immediate emergency work by our legislators. Thank you, David and Bobby. All during this time of unprecedented challenge and struggle. And it just makes me realize and appreciate more than ever the sanctuary that being outdoors, surrounded by a stunning landscape like the kingdom provides.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent. Well, I do want to take a moment to thank you all for taking time to communicate with Vermonters, really all across the state. I guess with it being internet, they could be anywhere in the world, but really to talk about and highlight the opportunities of the Northeast Kingdom, some of the struggles and challenges that we need to keep working to tackle, but really throwing out this conversation with a range of perspectives. So thank you for taking the time to join. I know just before this, I was covering some tomatoes in the high tunnel for hopefully this last cold night. So if anybody's got to get out before the last minutes of dark, I want to let people do that to protect anything you might have out that might be sensitive. If people have follow-up questions, they want to reach any of these folks, if you don't know how to reach them directly, you can send a question to info@zuckerman4vt.com. We'll make sure to direct questions and emails to those individuals if you want to follow up with anybody. And if you have questions as well, you can visit my website, zuckerman4vt.com, and we can continue the conversation about the economy of the Northeast Kingdom. So thank you all for joining, and good night.